Konnichiwa, I'm John Hornick. Welcome to my Japanese Faves series where we'll cover every major type of Japanese food. This lesson is Miso 101. You can also take my other lessons. I have my cooking course which is called Learning to Cook Like a Pro, One Small Plate at a Time. It's 104 lessons, starts off easy, gets progressively more difficult, and it ends with the ultimate challenge, which is actually 5 lessons in one. You can also view my other series, Italian Faves, Impress Your Date, Sauces to Die For, Spain on a Small Plate, French Faves, which includes my Julia Plus series, which is Julia Child's recipes to which I've tried to add a little plus, and bonus lessons, which are things like how to break down a chicken. Now let's talk about what is miso. Miso is a long fermented paste. It takes 2 or 3 years to make miso. And it's made from either soybeans and salt, in which case it's called hacho miso or mame miso, or it's made from soybeans, rice, and salt, in which case it's called kome miso, which is also the most popular type of miso used in Japan. Or if it's made from brown rice, it's called genmai miso. If it's made from soybeans, barley, and salt, it's called mugi miso. Now, miso is a pillar of Japanese cuisine. It's used in a lot of things for a lot of different purposes. And it's been called by the Japanese, it's been called the gift of the gods. It's full of umami, and umami doesn't have a direct translation in English. It's been variously translated as things like savory or tasty. I translate this term umami to mean yummy or yumminess. I have a separate video on what is umami. Highly recommended. Miso can be anything from savory to sweet, and it's extremely versatile, and it has many different uses, which I'll discuss a little bit later in this video. And in Japan, it's eaten in soup, and the soup is eaten for breakfast almost every day by almost everybody in Japan. And I've read that about 80% of miso consumption in Japan is in miso soup, which is almost always eaten at breakfast, and it's often also eaten at lunch or at dinner time. Now, miso has various qualities. Its consistency is kind of like the consistency of peanut butter or thicker. It comes in different colors from dark or reddish brown to yellow to a light cream color. And by the way, lighter colors usually mean less salt. That's not a hard and fast rule, but lighter colors usually are less salty. Miso need not be cooked. That means it can be used in, say, a sauce or in a dressing or a dip without having to cook it. It's usually pasteurized, at least in this country, but nama means unpasteurized in Japanese. Nama is better because the miso continues to ferment, and also there are other more subtle qualities that can be killed off or ruined by the pasteurization process. And miso also, most of it, keeps for almost forever, except saikyo or white miso. That's fermented less time, so it doesn't keep as long. The other misos really keep for a long time. Now, rice-based miso, which is kome miso or genmai miso, kome miso is made with white rice, and genmai miso is made with brown rice. That, if it is red or brown in color, dark red or brown in color, that's called aka miso. And it's still kome miso because it's made with rice, but if it's red or reddish or brown, it's aka miso. So it's aka kome miso. And this miso is usually rich, and it's dark, and it's savory, not sweet. Now, mellow red miso, there's also mellow red miso, and then there's sweet red miso as well. And if you buy red miso, it will often turn browner as time goes on. That's fine. This miso is particularly well suited for use in soups and stews, and also for marinating red meat or for use with oily fish. But I'll say this several times, there are no hard and fast rules. You can really use any miso for anything. But this aka miso is particularly well suited for those uses. Now, there's also white miso that's rice-based, and this is called shiro miso or saikyo miso. and this is sweet. It's used in dressings. Also, it's good for marinating fish, especially delicately flavored fish. Now, the mellow beige rice-based miso is called Amakuchi Tanshoku. And please excuse my Japanese. I've gotten comments that my Japanese is not very good, and I totally admit that. I have a terrible accent. So it may not sound the way the Japanese would actually say it, but mellow beige miso, in my pronunciation is Amakuchi Tanshoku. And yellow miso is called Shinshu, and that's because that's where it's from, which is in central Japan. And this type of miso is viewed as an all-purpose miso, and it's particularly well suited for use in soups and dressings and dips. Now, if you combine any of these misos together, that's called awase miso, and it means it's a mixture of misos. And mixed misos are generally used as all-purpose misos, and awase miso is often used in miso soup. Now, if the miso is made from barley, it's called mugi miso. Now, this is not as popular as rice-based miso. It is dark, and it's salty, and it is chunky. And the regular type of mugi miso is karakuchi mugi miso, and the mellow type is amakuchi mugi miso. Now, there's also miso that is made from soybeans and salt, and it doesn't have the rice or the barley in it. And this is called hacho, and hacho is actually from a street where it's made in a particular place. And it doesn't have to be made there to be called hacho. It can be made anywhere in Japan and called hacho, but the more generic term for the soybean-based miso is mame miso. And hacho or mame miso is revered in Japan. It has a long history of traditions surrounding it. And the term shibui has been applied to it. Now, shibui means refined tastefulness. Now, shibui can be used to describe many different things, not just miso, but it has been used, is used to refer to hacho miso because it's thought to have a refined tastefulness. Now, this type of miso is salty, and it's thick, and it's dark. Sometimes it's chunky. Some people sense or taste chocolate notes in it. I'm not good at picking out those types of flavors, but it's, if other people taste it, I'm sure it's there. Now, misos, the other misos, the rice-based miso and the barley-based miso, they're made with a friendly mold called Aspergillus oryzae. And a different type of friendly mold is used to make the hacho miso, and that's Aspergillus hacho. And this type of miso is particularly well suited for use in stews. Now let's talk about the nutritional benefits of miso. Miso is really a superfood. It has a lot of nutritional and health benefits. It's high in B vitamins, especially B12. It's high in vitamin E. It's high in protein, about 15% protein. It aids digestion, and that's because of the lactic acid that's in it. And it's said to remove toxins from the body, and that makes it particularly good for hangovers. Okay. Now, there are other benefits that are not proven, but they've been the subject of studies. So I'm not saying that these things are benefits of miso, but they've been attributed to miso by others who know a lot more than I do, and some of whom have done studies on this topic. And so some say that it's good for vascular health, that it lowers cholesterol, and that it lowers blood pressure, and that it's anti-carcinogenic, and that it reduces the risk of heart disease and liver disease. Now, the jury's still out on these things. There's more research to be done, and I'm sure we'll learn more about it as time goes on. But many people believe, based upon just anecdotal evidence and also from studies, that there are great health benefits to miso. Now, I've mentioned that it contains salt, and that it can be salty. And it usually has a salt content of about 5 to 14%. Now, you might think something with 14% salt is going to taste really salty, but it's actually balanced by other flavors that are in the miso. So a miso that has 14% salt is not going to taste as salty as you might think, but it can be used as a salt substitute. I'll talk a little bit more about that. More salt generally means that the miso is generally more savory, and less salt generally means that the miso is sweeter. But again, no hard and fast rules. Now, I've given you some equivalents here. There's about 1/4 teaspoon of salt in 1½ tablespoons of sweet miso. There's about 1/4 tablespoon of salt in 1 tablespoon of mellow miso. And there is about 1/4 teaspoon of salt in 1½ teaspoons of salty miso. So you can see there's a different salt content depending on whether it is sweet, mellow, or salty miso. And just for reference, I've also given you the equivalents to soy sauce. Shoyu, 1 teaspoon of shoyu contains about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now let's talk about uses of miso as a flavoring or as an ingredient. As I mentioned, it's used in soup. It's used in miso soup. It can be used in broths. It's often used with dashi. And I have a separate lesson on making dashi. Dashi is Japanese stock. Very easy to make, and another one of the pillars of Japanese cuisine. And I'm intentionally saying dashi because I had a comment from one of my viewers who says that the way that I pronounce dashi drives him crazy when I say dashi. So I'm trying to say dashi if I can. But again, my Japanese is terrible. Miso is used, it's great for hot pots, provides a lot of body and flavor, and it can really be used in any type of cooking method. It's often used in simmered dishes because they're kind of like hot pots and soups and broths, you know. And it's also used in sautéed and stir-fried dishes. You might be adding a lump, say, you know, a teaspoon or a tablespoon of miso to something you're going to saute or that you're going to stir fry. And you'll mix it in as you saute it or you stir fry it. But you may also allow that miso to have some pan contact. So you may actually be sauteing or stir frying the miso itself before you break it up or as you break it up into the other ingredients. It's also often used with grilled dishes where it either using it alone or in a sauce or marinade, it's brushed on whatever it is that you're grilling. Sometimes the grilled food, if say it's skewered, for example, is dipped into a sauce that contains miso, and then it's grilled. Same thing with deep frying. You might coat or brush the food, whatever it happens to be, with some miso or miso-based sauce before you bread it for deep frying. It's also used in baking, and that baking could be savory or sweet. I had a recipe years ago that I made, somebody else's recipe, for banana bread that incorporated miso, and it was great. I wish I could find that recipe again. It's also used in dressings and toppings and dips and spreads, especially the white miso, but again, no hard and fast rules. You can use any miso in any of these things. And of course, it's used in sauces, and it can be a very important ingredient in sauces. Now, there are other uses. It can be used in a marinade. Now, marinades they do impart flavor, but their other main purpose is to tenderize, okay? So the miso is good in marinades, especially salty miso, and it's good for meat, for fish, for shellfish, or even tofu. Miso is also can be used as a thickener because it provides body, and it's also used as a pickling medium. I've never done this, but I've read that it's used, especially the sweeter misos are used as pickling mediums. I've mentioned that it can also be used as a salt substitute. It can also, and I gave you some equivalents on slide 13. It can also be used as a fat substitute because it provides the body that fat would provide. I've had recipes that taste like they have a lot of fat in them, like butter, for example, and in fact, it has none. It's the miso that's providing that body that a fat would provide. And also, it can be used for the same reasons. It can be used as a meat substitute because it provides body and depth. Now, if you want more information on miso, you can get this book here, which I show on the screen. It's by William Shurtleff and Akiko Aoyagi. This book is everything you always wanted to know about miso, but were afraid to ask. It has about the history of miso, how miso is made, different regional information about miso, recipes for food cooked with miso, misos in sandwich spreads, misos in sauces. It covers really the gamut of miso. Now, where do you get miso? Well, you can get it in probably most supermarkets. I buy miso at Whole Foods, but I also buy it other places too. You may also have a Japanese grocery near you or an Asian grocery near you. They probably have a good selection of misos. There are also some online stores. The Japanese Pantry has a really good selection of imported artisanal misos, and same of the Umami Insider, an online store, web store, and also Natural Import Company. They also have a line of imported artisanal misos. Now, I hope this video helps you to understand the basics of miso. But which one you use is not critical. As I said before, there are no rules, okay? Experiment with different misos. Experiment with different combinations, all right? And I think you will find a lot of value in the use of miso. It's very versatile, as I've said. You can use it for a lot of things. You can even use it in Western cooking, all right? So please remember to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.